Analyze Your Stroke, a Q-Chief production. Welcome, and thank you for purchasing the Q-Chief Stroke Analysis video. My name is John Harlock. I'm a retired Master Chief in the United States Navy and an advanced pool instructor with the Professional Billiards Instructor Association, the PBIA. I'm also a certified instructor with the American Q Sports Association, the ACS. For years, I've been giving pool lessons that include a video stroke analysis. The analysis is a foundation for the lesson. Using it as a tool, the instruction can be tailored to the student's individual needs. And afterwards, the student can use the video during practice to reinforce lessons learned and measure improvement. There are a countless number of pool books and videos on the market that explain stroke fundamentals. A couple of my favorite videos include Play Better Pool with Randy Gottlicher and Scott Lee, and The Pool Lesson with Jerry Brysath. My favorite books include Play Great Pool by Mark Wilson and The Illustrated Principles to Pool and Billiards by Dr. Dave. These instructional materials are excellent, as are many others. Additionally, there are hundreds of free articles and short videos on the internet. It is not my intent to duplicate their work, but unlike other videos, I'm going to show you how you can analyze your stroke. You'll learn how to identify and correct flaws so that you can deliver a straight, fluid, repeatable stroke. This video is produced using recording devices available to everyone, the same recording devices that you will use to analyze your stroke. I will also use an inexpensive template that you can make using ordinary materials found in the home or commercially available at minimal costs. Now, although this video will give you a better insight to improve your stroke, it will not replace the trained eye of a professional billiard instructor. To find an instructor in your area, go to the PBIA or ACS websites. So, let's get started. This presentation will help you understand the basics of a stroke analysis, including the use of a stroke model, a template, and a shot line. You will also understand the characteristics of different types of cameras and mounts to help you select the best recording media available. You will set up a pool table and cameras to record your stroke from different views. With these videos, you will learn to compare your stroke to the basic pendulum stroke model and identify typical flaws that routinely cause a missed shot. You'll then learn to correct the flaws so that you can deliver a reliable, straight stroke. Before we set up the table and camera, we need to make a shooting template. The shooting template will make it easy to see the Q-tip's position, measure tip gap, bridge length, and follow through. The template is made from any thin fabric similar to the cloth on a pool table. Paper and painter's tape also work well. Select a color that will contrast your pool table cloth to make it easy to see in the video. I recommend a width of about 2 to 3 inches. Wide ribbon and painter's tape work well. However, painter's tape has limited reuse. I will use 2-inch wide painter's tape in this presentation. I start with a section of tape a little longer than 24 inches. I put it on a sheet of wax paper to make it easy to work with and mount to a working surface. The working surface can be a board or other rigid surface that you can mark on and not be ruined with razor cuts. After mounting the tape, mark off 24 inches. Do not cut it to length at this time. Draw a line lengthwise down the center of the tape. This line will represent the shot line. At one end, draw an arrowhead. When setting up the table, this arrowhead will point to the target pocket. Label this end A and the opposite end B. Make a mark on the shot line 13 1/8 inches from point B. Center a paper reinforcement on this point, then draw a circle with a 1 1/8 inch radius. This circle will represent a 2 1/4 inch diameter cue ball. When making shots during the analysis, the cue ball will be placed on the reinforcement. The Q-tip contact point will be where the circle overlaps the shot line on the side opposite the arrowhead. From the contact point, mark 1-inch increments in both directions. Label the contact point 0 and the increments 1 through 11. Trim the template to size and punch a hole in the center of the reinforcement. When I first started doing video stroke analysis, recording was limited to using heavy VHS camcorders. The VHS tapes could not be edited and required a VHS recorder to view the video. Today, there's a wide selection of small cameras that record digital media that's easy to use and easy to edit. I place digital cameras into two broad categories: direct and remote viewing. The direct viewing cameras have viewfinders on the back or on the side. They include your standard digital cameras, camcorders, tablets, and smartphones. The advantage of direct viewing cameras is that they generally have a high speed and high resolution, producing sharp images. The disadvantage is that you need sufficient room behind the camera to get the image in the viewfinder. Remote viewing cameras use a computer screen, tablet, or smartphone for viewing. These cameras include action cameras, webcams, security cameras, and internet provider cameras like baby cams. The advantages of using remote viewing cameras are that they can be mounted easily in areas with limited space behind the camera. As you'll see later, they will also be used to help correct several types of flaws. I recommend using cameras that offer a speed of at least 30 frames per second and a minimum resolution of 640 by 480 pixels. Almost all of today's cameras will meet or exceed these specifications. It is important to mount the camera to ensure that the video produced is stable and remains aligned to the reference, usually the shot line. Tripods and microphone booms work well and can be borrowed from friends or purchased at low cost on the internet, at flea markets, or at garage sales. Tablets and smartphones may require adapters for tripod mounting. The wall brackets used where space is limited can be purchased online or can be made out of wood or plastic. Small angle brackets purchased at your local hardware store can also be used. The bracket can be attached to the wall with a small screw, or you can use double-sided tape or Velcro if you don't want to damage the wall. A short 1/4 thumb screw will mount the camera to the bracket. We'll now look at how to set up the table and position the camera to produce videos suitable for analysis. Table setup. Setting up the table correctly for a stroke analysis is very important. It establishes the shot line that will be used as a reference for camera and template placement. It also marks cue and object ball placement for repeatable shots. I use 2 diagonal corner pockets. However, side pockets can be used if camera placement is an issue. The corner pockets provide a shot with a medium difficulty, about 2 diamonds, with a distance to the target pocket of a half a table. Stroke problems will show up as a missed shot. First, mark the center of each diagonal pocket as viewed from the opposite pocket with a paper reinforcement. Place the reinforcements on the pocket liner. Establish a shot line between the pockets by either using a laser or a string. Place a paper reinforcement on the shot line in the center of the table. This will be used for object ball placement. Place a stroke template with its center line on the shot line, with the cue ball reinforcement at the second diamond. If the template is made from ribbon or cloth, secure it in place with painter's tape. I also extend the shot line to the floor by using painter's tape. If your floor is covered by a carpet, you may need to use a 1/2-inch strip of duct tape. Remove the string or laser. Keep the reinforcements on the pockets. They'll be used later when viewing the video during the analysis. With the cue ball and object ball on the paper reinforcements, you'll have a perfectly set up straight-in shot to the corner pocket. Place another paper reinforcement on the center of the rubber bumper on the cue. This will help you visualize the cue movement in the video. Setting up the cameras to capture the stroke. One of the most informative and revealing views of a player's stroke is from the back. When setting up the table, reinforcements marking the shot line were left on the table. These reinforcements provide alignment for the camera and will be used later during analysis. The camera can be mounted on a tripod, or if space is limited, a wall bracket could be used. The camera needs to capture the elbow, forearm, wrist, and the butt of the cue in the viewfinder relative to the shot line. When looking at the back view, the forearm, wrist, and cue butt should be on the shot line. Throughout the stroke, the butt of the cue should remain on the shot line, and the upper arm should remain still, as noted by little or no elbow movement. During the table setup, you mark the shot line on the floor. Raising the back camera and mounting it on a wall bracket or microphone boom, with the shot line centered in the viewfinder, will allow you to capture the cue movement along the shot line. With a straight stroke, the cue will not deviate from the shot line. The side view reveals a shooter's hand position during the stroke. This video discusses a pendulum stroke recommended by most professional billiards instructors. The three hand positions are set, pause, and finish. The set position is the beginning of the stroke and is characterized by the forearm perpendicular to the cue with the cue tip very close to the cue ball. The pause position is at the end of the backstroke, and the finish position is a natural completion of the stroke. We will discuss these positions in more detail later. The camera should be set at a location to capture the player in the shooting position, at a 90-degree angle from the player's dominant side. Right side for right-handed players and left side for left-handed players. The type of camera used is dependent on the room necessary to get the player in the viewfinder. When room is limited, a remote viewing camera may be necessary. The view should look like this. The shot, as seen from above, provides useful information associated with tip gap, bridge length, length of the backstroke, follow-through, and tip position at the finish. A small remote view camera can be attached to the ceiling above the cue ball using a 1/4-20 hanger bolt, Velcro, or double-sided tape. The GoPro camera pictured here is mounted with goo glue. Another method is to use a microphone boom modified to hold a camera. A microphone boom can be found on Amazon for less than $20. An alternative to using a camera above the cue ball is to place a camera on the table perpendicular to the shot line. Marking the table with thin tape or posted single-line label and cover-up tape will help identify distances. On this shot, I have a 6-inch and 10-inch distance marked behind the cue ball and a 6-inch distance forward from the cue ball contact point. From this perspective, you can see the tip gap, bridge length, distance the cue ball is drawn back, and the distance where the cue stops at the finish or follow-through. You'll also see the cue angled down with the tip on or near the table. Another camera mounted on a short stand in front of the camera, which doesn't restrict contact or movement of the object ball, will capture the cue tip position when the stroke is finished. It should be centered on the shot line. Setup of the front camera uses the string or laser line used during the table setup. I will be using a Mason's line to make it stand out in the visuals. After setting up the stroke line, set the camera close to the table at the corner pocket opposite the shooter. The shot line and shooter's head should be centered in the viewfinder. During the shot, The shooter's eyes should be level. They may be centered over the shot line, however, it is not necessary. The shooter's eye position is dependent on several variables, including eye dominance. The shooter needs to determine the head and eye position needed to see the center of the cue ball when in the shooting position. During the final stroke, the eye should be focused on the object ball. There should be no excess head and body movement during the shot, and the player needs to stay down until the object ball is pocketed or hits the rail. We're going to look at a common pull shot using camera setup as previously described. We'll start with the shot approach, then look at the stance, transition into and characteristics of a good shooting position, then taking pre-strokes and finish with the final stroke. Afterwards, we'll look at problems that could result in a missed shot in the same order. First, you want to observe the table layout. You want to determine the shot you want to take and how you're going to make it. This is also a good time to apply chalk to the tip of the cue. You begin your shot approach from behind the cue ball. Mentally draw a straight line between the center of the cue ball and the exact aim point on the object ball. Then, step into that shot line with your dominant foot. Your right foot for right-handed players and left foot for left-handed players. You've now completed aiming. Everything you do after this is focused on putting the cue on the shot line and delivering a straight, fluid stroke. Stance. There are two general types of pool stances recommended by pool instructors: the snooker stance and the American pool stance. Both provide alignment, balance, comfort, and clearance to stroke the cue. I'll be using a tabletop simulator during this demonstration. The simulator includes a cue ball trainer, a shot line on the table. The shot line is extended to the floor with perpendicular lines to help show foot placement. This arrangement will allow you to see the shot approach and stance relative to the shot line. You will also be able to see the transition to the shooting position and bridge placement. I'm recording the front view with a webcam, and the back view is being recorded with an action camera. We'll start with the snooker stance. The American pool stance is similar. I'll be starting from behind the cue ball, and I'm visualizing the shot right to the object ball with binocular vision. Between the cue ball and the object ball, I'm mentally drawing a straight line. That line will be the shot line. When I step into the shot from behind the cue ball, I'll be placing my dominant foot on the shot line. Note, with the cue at my side, the cue is not on the shot line. But observe my hip and cue position when I make a sidestep. When I make a sidestep, the cue will go over the shot line. This provides clearance for my arm to stroke the cue during the shot. My non-dominant foot is placed approximately shoulder width apart, right across from my dominant foot. This is called the snooker stance. Okay. The American pool stance is very much similar to the snooker stance. Again, I'll step into the shot by placing my dominant foot on the shot line. My eyes will be focused on the target and the cue ball. Note, again, with my cue on my side, it will not be on the shot line. But again, observe my hips and cue placement as I move my non-dominant foot approximately shoulder width apart and forward of my dominant foot. Again, my hips move out of the way and the cue goes right behind the cue ball. This is called the American pool stance. In conjunction with or immediately after setting your stance, you will transition into the shooting position, bending over and placing your bridge on the table. This short video clip captures the shooter's view of guiding the pool cue to the table. Bring the cue down straight and use it as a sighting aid. The bridge will land on the shot line and the cue will be lined up with the center of the cue ball. Now let's look at the transition between the upright position and the shooting position. I start from behind the cue ball with my eyes focused between the target and the cue ball, mentally developing that shot line. I step into that shot line with my dominant foot. I place my bridge hand on the cue and I bring it upright. When I take my side step, I will use the cue as a sight, like a rifle, and bring it right down behind the cue ball. My bridge hand will land on the shot line, as will my grip hand and the butt of the cue. My eyes are now focused on the cue ball and will remain focused on the cue ball until I take my final stroke. Let's take a look at the shooting position using cameras before you take any pre-strokes. As seen from the top, your bridge should land anywhere between 6 to 10 inches from the cue ball. With the correct stance, you will have a stable platform with your weight shifted a little forward. The bridge should have 3-point contact with the table to ensure it does not rock during the stroke. This would be 2 fingers and the heel of your hand. Your shoulder, elbow, wrist, and butt of the cue should be on the shot line. The back view should also show the elbow, wrist, and butt of the cue on the shot line. This view is also good to look at the grip. A loose grip is essential to a fluid stroke. The finger should be cradling the cue with the side of the thumb holding it in place. The thumb should be pointing to the floor. As seen from the side, your forearm will be perpendicular to the cue, and the cue will be level, with the tip close to the cue ball. You are now in the set position as described earlier, ready to take pre-strokes. Your eyes should be focused on the cue ball to ensure the tip is at the exact contact point. There are 2 purposes of the pre-stroke. 1, to ensure the tip of the cue will strike the cue ball precisely as intended. And 2, to ensure the cue is delivered straight along the shot line. To accomplish both, draw the cue back to the bridge slowly using your triceps muscle. Then stop momentarily before beginning the forward stroke. This is the pause position. The momentary delay between the back and forward stroke allows a smooth transition from the triceps muscle and the biceps muscle, which is responsible for the forward acceleration of the cue. A quick movement here could result in a jerk, taking the cue off the shot line. Return the cue back to the set position, verifying that the tip will return to the precise contact point and observing the cue moving in a straight line. Repeat your pre-stroke 1 or more times. However, it is good to get in the habit of taking the same number of pre-strokes for every shot. You are now ready to take your final stroke. Starting from the set position, shift your eyes to the target. Slowly bring the cue back to the pause position. Stop momentarily. Then accelerate the cue forward. The cue tip will strike the cue ball and your arm will continue the forward movement until it comes to a natural stop. This is the finish position. Observe the cue tip position. It should be on the shot line and dipping down towards the table. Observe the cue ball and object ball movement from this position as long as you do not interfere with the ball movement. You're looking to see if everything goes as planned. You can now get up from the shot. We will now look at some common flaws as seen by the cameras. We'll start with the shot approach. Shot alignment begins with the player's approach, stepping into the shot from the side, or backing into the shot from near the table are less likely to result in placing your dominant foot on the shot line. Slow down. Visualize the shot from behind the cue ball and step into the shot with your dominant foot. The archer stance. One of the more common issues is associated with a long, narrow stance, referred to as an archer stance. This stance does not provide alignment to the shot line, is off-balanced, and can be uncomfortable when shooting for a long time. It also causes other problems with the stroke that you'll see later. This is a demonstration of the archer stance. To describe the archer stance, I'll use the same method that we use to describe the snooker stance and the pool stance. Again, we'll start from behind the cue ball, visualizing the shot line. I'll step into the shot, placing my dominant foot on the shot line. At this point, I'm going to place my non-dominant foot directly forward of my dominant foot. As I do this, watch how the cue moves. Note my body is facing away from the shot. To bring the cue back into position near the shot line, I have to turn, twisting my back and hips to bring the cue back into the shot. Note that the cue is not on the shot line. When I bend over, I'll be bending in a direction away from the shot, and the cue will not move into position. To bring the cue into position, I have to use my shoulder and wrist to bring the cue over the shot line. This develops other problems of elbow and wrist deviation that we'll describe later. Landing the bridge on the shot line is essential to an accurate shot. Bringing the cue in from the side may not provide correct bridge placement. Landing the bridge 1/8 of an inch on either side of the shot line will result in about a 1-degree cue angle and could result in a missed shot. Correcting the approach, stance, and transition issues is not difficult, but does take time and effort. Use the lines on the floor and mark a comfortable foot position for a pool stance. From behind the cue ball, step into the shot. Place your feet on the marks as you guide the cue straight down behind the cue ball. Verify the bridge lands on the shot line. Do not shoot. Get up and repeat the process. It may seem awkward at first, but it will soon be a natural movement. Shooting position issues. To take advantage of a full swing, the grip hand should hang naturally, straight to the floor when in the set position. Holding the cue too far forward or back will result in an abbreviated stroke that leads to other problems. To locate the optimal grip position, place a rubber band on the butt of the cue. Then, using the side camera, move your grip hand until it is perpendicular to the cue in the set position. Move the rubber band to that position. The cue should be cradled loosely in the fingers, with the thumb holding it in place. The wrist is relaxed, allowing the hand to hang naturally towards the floor. During the stroke, the cue will pivot in the hand and the shaft will assume a downward angle after contacting the cue ball. A tight grip will not allow the cue to pivot, and the shaft will come off the bridge and go airborne during the stroke. Tightening the grip during the stroke increases the tension in the wrist muscles and moves the cue off the shot line. Placing the thumb on the top of the butt of the cue will prevent the cue from pivoting in the hand, which will also cause the shaft to come off the bridge and go airborne. The target on the cue ball is about 1/16 of a square inch. The accuracy of tip placement requires side-to-side movement of the cue be avoided. Inward and outward wrist curls engage the wrist muscle and forms an angle from the wrist to the cue. This angle must be maintained throughout the stroke for an accurate hit. Any wrist movement during the stroke will move the cue tip off target and increase the chances of a missed shot. The remedy for wrist curls will be discussed in the next section on elbow deviations. Elbow deviations, routinely called a chicken wing or an elbow tuck. Elbow deviations are characterized by the elbow and grip hand not in alignment. The butt of the cue may or may not be on the shot line. They are easy to see from the back view because they show up as the elbow tucked in or sticking out. In many cases, an elbow tuck will also have an outward wrist deviation, and a chicken wing will have an inward wrist deviation. These short video clips show the cue movement when shooting with an elbow deviation. You can see how the angular movement of the cue can result in a missed shot. Usually, the deviation can be traced back to the stance. Most players can remedy the situation by starting with a pool or snooker stance and focus on keeping their elbow and upper arm on the shot line. The shoulder muscle should remain still while stroking the cue. The best way to do this is by placing a string vertically in the center of a tablet or laptop used with a remote viewing camera. Line the screen up so the string becomes an extension of the shot line on the template. A remote viewing camera is then set up behind the shooter, also centered on the shot line. When you transition to the shooting position, ensure your bridge lands on the shot line. While stroking the cue, you can look at the monitor and see what is occurring behind you. It is easy to move your upper arm in alignment with the shot line. Continued exercising the stroke in this manner will develop muscle memory to improve your stroke, stance, and bridge placement. You've completed your pre-strokes. You stop in the set position, verifying the precise tip contact point. Then your eyes shift to the target, the object ball or rail. Drawing back the cue slowly, you verify that it's moving straight on the shot line. A momentary pause at the end of the backstroke allows you to ensure that the shot feels just right. If it does, accelerate the cue forward. During this forward acceleration, several things can go wrong. 1. You can poke the cue ball, decelerating the cue before contact and pulling it back suddenly, like the recoil on a rifle. This action can jerk the cue off the shot line, resulting in a miss. 2. You can get up prematurely. Besides losing the best view of the shot, bad timing may result in lifting the cue before tip contact, resulting in a miss. The following exercise will eliminate poke and help you stay down on the shot. One of the most effective stroke exercises I use is called the center ball stroke drill. This exercise accomplishes the following. It perfects your stroke, it helps you find center ball, and it makes you stay down on the shot. Setup. Run a string lengthwise from the center diamond on one side of the table to the corresponding diamond on the other side. Place the template with the center line under the string with the paper reinforcement on the head spot. Once the template is in place, you can remove the string. Now you can also position the template using a laser in place of the string. The diamond on the foot side of the table will be your target. To see it better, you can place a piece of chalk with a paper reinforcement on the diamond as illustrated. Execution. Place a stripe ball on the template reinforcement with the stripe positioned vertically. Using the techniques discussed earlier to stroke the cue, make the shot. Aim to hit the target using a center ball hit with a little follow to get it to roll forward after the hit. When you finish the stroke, look at the tip position on the template. It should be on the center line a few inches past the reinforcement. Also, look at the ball as it travels to the target. There should be little or no wobble on the stripe. Stay down in this position until the ball hits the rail and returns. If hit perfectly, the ball will hit the tip of the cue when it returns. Any error in your stroke will show immediately after the cue ball hits the rail. If any spin is inadvertently applied on the cue ball, it will not come back in a straight line. And 3. You can drop your upper arm and elbow, pushing the cue ball. This motion can introduce shoulder rotation, taking the cue off the shot line, or can raise the tip, resulting in missing the contact point on the cue ball. There are primarily 2 reasons for dropping the upper arm and elbow during the final stroke. The first is holding the cue too far forward. With this grip position, the shooter is already at the finish position when tip contact with the cue ball is made. The only way to continue the stroke through the cue ball is to engage the shoulder and push the cue forward. The remedy for this is simple. Move the grip hand back so that it is perpendicular to the cue when in the set position. The second reason for dropping the elbow isn't as easy to remedy. Many routine activities we perform, like shoveling snow, pushing a broom, and throwing a ball, uses the biceps, triceps muscles in conjunction with the shoulder, upper back, and chest muscles to acquire more power. This power is not needed to stroke the cue. However, the motion is almost second nature. Learning to keep the other muscles still during the stroke takes work. You will find the following will help. The elbow joint is similar to a piano hinge and will go in one direction, controlled by the bicep and tricep. The shoulder, however, is a remarkable joint. It's controlled primarily with 4 muscles that allow the arm to go up, down, to the left, to the right, or virtually any combination. Controlling the shoulder is a little bit more difficult than the elbow because you have 4 muscles that you're dealing with. That could present a problem when you're shooting pool. We're going to learn how to control the shoulder muscle using a couple of inexpensive weights that you can pick up at a department store, online, or even at yard sales. I found the best way to train the muscles to remain still is similar to the remedy we use to eliminate elbow deviations. In the previous video, an action camera and tablet were used to see the back arm movements while stroking the cue. This time, a webcam with a laptop is used. Either combination will work just fine. Setup. A string placed vertically down the screen of a laptop is aligned to the center line of the template placed on the pool table. A webcam placed behind the shooter is also aligned to the center line of the template. With the camera turned on, you will be able to observe the stroke arm movements on the screen. Execution. Get into the shooting position. The cue ball drawn on the template will be your target. First, start with the cue. Stroke through the cue ball while observing your stroke arm on the screen. Focus on keeping your upper arm up. Do not drop your elbow. Next, do the same with a small weight, about 2 pounds. Again, stroke your arm as if you were stroking the cue, going from set to pause, then finish. Observe your stroke arm on the screen, again focusing on keeping your upper arm up with no elbow drop. Progressively increase the weight, keeping the arm up and weight centered on the shot line. When you can successfully perform this exercise with a 10-pound weight, muscle memory will unconsciously keep your arm up during the stroke. Alternative. An alternative to using a camera to observe arm movements is to use a mirror positioned on the side of the table while stroking the cue along the tablecloth intersection. This view will provide upper arm elbow movements. However, it will not be able to provide feedback on your stroke alignment to the shot line. You will need to observe tip position covering the cloth table intersection to determine if the cue is moving on a straight line. There's no magic cure for a flawed stroke. There's no gadget or electronic device that'll take the place of hard work and practice. All of the videos and screenshots taken to make this presentation were set up and executed by me with no assistance, just to show you that it can be done by one person. But working with another makes it more fun, and it gives you the opportunity to share cameras and other resources. A video editing program will also be an asset. I use Snagit and Camtasia by TechSmith to make this presentation. There are several others on the market. You can also post your videos on YouTube and send me the link. I can provide you with a professional stroke analysis and return edited copies of your videos showing the flaws. If you have any questions or want me to analyze your stroke, you can reach me at jmharlock@att.net or visit my website, qchief.com. Thanks again for your purchase, and have a great day.